Hello and welcome. Uh, for those who are not used to my channel or me, my name is Brother Yubby. I primarily record and upload Pokemon, specifically Draft League, and this is going to be my draft analysis for the BTR Boost the Ratings Pokemon Draft League. Now, this is my own personal draft league. I started it a few years ago with a few friends, and it's casually grown to now 16 people, and we've gotten some pretty decent competition. Uh, and this is just going to be a general draft analysis. I'm not going to go too in depth. I'm just going to go through my general thought process and just kind of what I was trying to build around and how it fit around what I actually ended up drafting. So my playstyle in Draft League specifically is bulky offense. I'm very open about that. I don't care if anyone and everyone knows it. I like to be able to invest in my defensives and still hit incredibly hard. So a Pokemon that I've loved using before is Hydreigon, because it's a Pokemon that you don't typically see in a defensive role, but you're able to put it in a defensive role by investing in its HP and either defense that you really needed to take on one, two, or possibly three different threats in the opponent's team, but you can still hit back incredibly hard with Hydreigon has a base 125 special attack. So even investing in those defenses, you still get the power output that you really want and can use effectively just to whittle down and break down your opponent's wall core and also be able to fend off their offense. So going into this draft, I had the fourth overall pick, fourth or fifth, one of the two. And so I had a few Pokemon on my radar initially. One was Celesteela. Number one was Celesteela. Because I'd never used it before, and it is incredible. Yes, it doesn't necessarily fit into bulky offense, but it is so versatile that you can run it offensively and still have the incredible bulk, or you can run it defensively and still hit hard. And it's just such an awesome Pokemon that I haven't been able to use. Steel type is arguably my second favorite type, right next to Fairy. And it would start to fill out my Fairy Dragon Steel core that I was initially going for in this draft. So first few picks go by, and nothing really jumped out as too threatening. And by the time it came to the pick right before me, all three Pokemon that I consider to be number one overall picks in Landorus, Therian, Celesteela, and Tapu Koko were all available. So I knew at least I was going to be able to get one of them. And going into the draft, I had a complete draft plan with every single Pokemon that I wanted laid out, and this was building around Celesteela. And I'll tell you, I got 90% of those Pokemon, but I'll tell you the pick right before me was Celesteela, and I did not get Celesteela. So, come to my pick, I am slightly devastated because I figured that Tapu Koko was going to go because, honestly, I think Tapu Koko is probably a bit better than Celesteela, at least currently in the draft format. But I can't blame the person before me for picking Celesteela. It's what I wanted. So I ended up going with Landorus Therian. And the reason I went with Landorus over Tapu Koko or anything else, possibly another steel type like Jirachi, was that Landorus Therian fits a similar role to Celesteela. Yes, it's not going to be as bulky, but it's going to be more offensive. So I can invest more in bulk and still hit hard. It can set up like Celesteela can in some way with Rock Polish. And it can utilize Z moves incredibly well. And in this league, we get two Z Pokemon, and it's a typical draft league style in which we have to draft one tier 1, one tier 2, two tier 3s, one tier 4, one tier 5, a Mega Pokemon, and we have 400 points for our free picks. 4 free picks specifically. And Landorus Therian, tier 1, incredible Pokemon, arguably one of the best Pokemon in the draft format. Really struggles with ice types, so I really wanted to help build around negating this ice weakness now and try and really threaten ice types from even wanting to come to the matches against me. And so now with Landorus Therian, it went all the way down and came all the way back up. There are 16 teams in this league, and it comes back to me, and the Mega Pokemon that I want and wanted to pair up with Celesteela, but also pairs up really well with Landorus, came back around, and that was Mega Charizard X. And I've talked I've talked with a few people before I not only drafted it but even thought about drafting it, and consistently on every team that I have built, I never have a switch in to a Mega Charizard X. And I've had to face it a few times, and it just ravages me. And I don't know what to do. And so you figure if you don't want to battle something, you don't want to face it, draft it. So I drafted Mega Charizard X, and this is just an incredible offensive threat to pair with an incredible offensive threat of Landorus Therian. It has incredible defenses as well. Once it Mega Evolves, it gains a huge um, defense and special defense boost to allow it to be much bulkier, and it actually has the same base special attack as it does physical attack, so I can run it specially if I really want to. But really, a Dragon Dance variant of Mega Charizard X can really just either bust holes through teams or can just sweep a team, and it's just a phenomenal mega. I think it's one of the top megas in the format currently. uh, so a few picks go by, it comes back down to me, and I knew that my team going forward was going to struggle a bit with recovery. So I drafted what I believe to be not only one of the best wish passers, but also one of the best, especially offensive fairy types in Sylveon. And I absolutely adore Sylveon. It is arguably one of my top 5 favorite Pokemon, and I have nothing bad to say about it. It is an incredible cleric, but Choice Specs Pixelate Hyper Voice runs through teams, especially teams that are specifically going to try and target down Landorus Therian and Charizard X will be incredibly weak to Sylveon. And one of the biggest problems to having Sylveon as a Choice Specs mon are Steel types. And there's one type that both Landorus and Mega Charizard X, hit super effectively, consistently. That is Steel types. So Steel types immediately are going to be pressured to either not be brought, or to be brought but have this incredible offensive presence against them in Charizard and Landorus that it's going to be very difficult to really take care of my Sylveon if I Choice Specs, or even if I run a setup with Calm Mind, or if I just decide to run a Cleric set, it's still going to hit incredibly hard. So I think Sylveon is really a good Pokemon in this team, and the rest of my team moving forward, it actually looks a lot like I built around Sylveon, even though I didn't, just because they all complement Sylveon incredibly well. So next in round 4, I decided to pick up my second tier 2, and I went with Rotom Wash. I think Rotom Wash is a very good tier 2 pick now that it got access to Defog. I'm not the biggest fan of it because it doesn't have recovery, but like I said, Sylveon is incredible for Wish support and Wish Pass, and Rotom Wash is bulky enough to where it can come in on almost any attack, tank that attack, and get a huge Wish Pass. Get a huge Wish back into it. Gives me Volt Switch momentum along with Landers to really get in my bigger threats, and a lot of Pokemon that come in to try and wall it either don't want to be burned or don't want to take a water type attack, and that is incredible for Rotom. And then come to round 5, I decided to go down into tier 3, and I picked up Shaman. There's not much I can say other than base 100's pure grass type. Very, very incredible defensively and offensively. Offensive Life Orb with Seed Flare hits incredibly hard and gets great coverage to the point where not many Pokemon are able to resist every attack that I'm going to be able to have in my arsenal, but it also gets Aromatherapy, and it can either synthesis Leech Seed or even rest and switch out because of its ability Natural Cure, and it's just such a great Pokemon that in tier 3 is really a steal. especially in round 5. And this really filled out my Firewater Grass core that I wasn't initially planning on filling out this quickly, but it ended up being a great Firewater Grass core that is almost unrivaled in the league. So next, in round 5, I ended up going back to tier 2, and I grabbed Conkeldurr. I do not know why it lasted this long. I do not know why I got it. I don't know how anyone let me get it. But this is just another massive, physically offensive threat that is pressuring every steel type that wants to come and break down and try and wall Sylveon. Sylveon, as a choice specs Pokemon, cannot break through really bulky steel types. But Conkeldurr, Landorus, and Charizard X all break through them without question. They don't even have good switch-ins. Most teams cannot have a switch-in to all 3 of them whatsoever. And Conkeldurr just filled a perfect role of a really, really strong physical attacker that, no, I didn't necessarily need another one. But I figured it couldn't hurt. And it can also be very bulky. I'm failing to recognize how bulky this draft is at this point, because Conkeldurr has a really great HP stat to where you can invest in HP and just tank a lot of hits. Max HP, max attack, Assault Vest can do a ton of work and actually tank a lot of special hits. And Flame Orb Guts boost. Flame Orb Guts is just an incredible set, and it can just hit incredibly hard, especially with the Mach Punch priority. And I think Conkeldurr is an incredible Pokemon, especially at tier 2. Next, I end up dropping into tier 5, and Miltank is tier 5 in this league. I don't know how this wasn't caught before, but I got it. And I can guarantee it probably will not be tier 5 next season. But I got Miltank in tier 5, another incredibly bulky Pokemon. Milk Drink, able to recover its own health, Stealth Rocks, Heal Bell if I want it, and just incredible abilities with like Thick Fat and Sap Sipper, and I think something else that I can't remember, but not really important at the moment. But just an incredible wall, both on the physical side and special side, specifically on the physical side, but can be very specially defensive, especially because that's such a high HP stat. And most ice type attacks are special, and a fair amount of fire type attacks are special. So Thick Fat can really come in handy. So next in round 8, I went back into tier 3 and I grabbed Alolan Muck. This was specifically because I needed a dark type and I needed something to absorb toxic spikes. Right now, my team was not necessarily weak to hazards, but it doesn't like hazards. And although Alolan Muck doesn't get rid of any sort of hazard, it gets rid of toxic spikes and Pursuit traps ghost types, and is just an incredible threat, especially now that it got a really nice Gluttony buff with the basically super citrus berries, and being able to run Recycle on an Alolan Muck and have basically 3 attacks or maybe a curse set is just a really, really awesome thing to have. It allows for another form of setup, and it's another physical attacker. I'm really loading on physical attackers at this point, which is good and bad. It just makes Sylveon a bit more of a threat. But Alolan Muck is just incredibly bulky as well on the special side. Physical side is meh, but I have a lot of Pokemon that can step in and fill a physically defensive role if I need it to. So next in round 9, I ended up picking up my last tier 2 in Azelf. For my 400 points, I decided to go with 3 tier 2s. They're each pointed for 120 points. So that brings me to 360, and then I have to get a tier 5, which is 40 points. And Azelf was my last tier 2. And Azelf basically filled a speed tier that I really needed. Right now, my speed tiers are awful. Spoiler alert, they're awful at the end of the draft as well. But this kind of helps. Azelf is just hits incredibly hard. Like, there's There are not many Pokemon that really want to come into Azelf because it's such a mixed attacker threat. And I mean that because it has base 125 physical attack and special attack. So I don't need to run it specially offensive all the time. I can run it physically offensive. I don't need to run it physically offensive all the time. I can run it specially offensive. I can run it as a suicide lead with Stealth Rocks and Explosion. Just an incredibly versatile mod that I think is a little underused. It also gives me U-turn if I want it, and that gives me my third U-turn user or Volt Switch, and allows me to really rack up a lot of momentum if I need it. Next Pokemon I grabbed my one and only Tier 4, and I grabbed Dusknoir. This was because, honestly, I did not like any other Tier 4s, and I needed a Ghost type. And I already knew what my round 11 Pokemon was going to be in my last Tier 5. And Dusknoir was just kind of like, it's there. It's bulky. Very, very bulky. Gets Pain Split, loves receiving wishes from Sylveon, and basically just made my team incredibly fat. And I mean that because I would have the option of bringing a bulky Landorus, Sylveon with Wish Pass, Alolan Muck, Miltank, Dusknoir, Shaman, just all of these defensive Pokemon, or Pokemon that can be run both offensively and defensively. Run them defensively and just make Sylveon be a Wish Passer, and they just keep regaining health and just wearing down my opponent's team. And I probably won't ever do that, but I could, and that just gives me a lot of defensive options to pair with my incredible offense at this point. And then my last Pokemon is one that I have been wanting to draft, and I told myself that I had to draft this Pokemon. And yes, it's a little memey, but it is Shelmet. And I love Shelmet as a draft league Pokemon because nobody sees it as a threat, and albeit it really isn't. But it's very, very good at what you don't expect it to be good at, which is just walling things. Yes, it's really only going to come as a wall. It has absolutely pitiful offensive stats. But Eviolite mixed with the ability to not get crit, and having access to two forms of hazards in Toxic Spikes and Spikes, it gets recovery with Recover, Toxic, and Infestation to trap in things that really can't break it down, is just a really great combo to have. And it may be something that my opponents don't prep for whatsoever, but if it comes, I want them to feel like they really made a mistake not prepping for it, because if Shelmet can really do anything to them, it's going to, and it's really great at what it does. Yes, it is a little bit setup fodder, but I think the rest of my draft is pretty good at not letting things set up because they're that either bulky or that offensive, and they're even the ones that are bulky hit hard, so they're not really worried about getting set up on. So that was basically my draft. And then at the end, of course, I declare 2 Z Pokemon. And my Z Pokemon are Landorus Therian, big surprise, and Azelf. Both incredible Z users. Landorus Z Fly, just nuke something and continue on my way. And then Azelf just has an incredible move pool. You won't know if the Z move is coming from the physical or special side. Just an awesome Pokemon to have the ability to have Z moves on. And that's basically my draft. I could have gone more in depth, but I didn't feel like boring you all too much. But thank you if you stuck around this long. Thank you for listening. And I will have my first 2 team builders and matches up very shortly after this video goes up, because they have already been completed and I will be recording them right after I record this. So thank you very much and have a great day.